The international delegation, fact-finding delegation, who arrived 2 days ago, all the same as the person sitting to my right side. Far right, we have Erin van der Maas, here from the ITF, International Transport Workers Federation in London. And next to me, we have Michael Tau. He represents the Uni Global Union and their head office in Nyon in Switzerland. And before we start this public hearing, I would also like to say that before we arrived here, Uni Global Union tried to set up a meeting with the Ikea Canada National Office, but unfortunately they declined that meeting with us. At this hearing, we'll be listening to a representative from the labor movement in Washington, sorry, in BC, and from the religious community, as well as from the workers, and hopefully from some public testifiers. The first person who will testify today is the president of British Columbia Federation of Labor, Mr. Jim Sinclair. You're welcome up to the podium.
Thank you very much. Especially I want to thank those who have traveled so far, Peter, yourself, and Erin, to come here and to be with us today and to be witness to what's going on in British Columbia. As you said, my name is Jim Sinclair. I'm president of the British Columbia Federation of Labor. We represent approximately 500,000 people who are unionized in British Columbia. I appear today with the full support of all the officers of the Federation. In fact, we just came from a meeting this morning. This dispute is extremely important to us, not only in the context of Ikea and its worldwide operations as a major corporation, but to the labor relations environment in British Columbia. I'm sure you're aware that Ikea is a highly profitable company. It made $4 billion last year. And in fact, the Ikea store where workers are locked up today was the first store built in North America by Ikea. It was its flagship as it entered its second largest market, which was becoming the second largest market, North America. We believe that store, which was recently built, is a significant part of the company's market here in Canada. We saw tough times during 2008 in British Columbia, as I'm sure you witnessed around the world. And during those times, there was pressure on wages to be moved downwards. We saw huge demands for concessions from many companies, and it was a struggle to maintain decent wage increases in British Columbia and, of course, North America. But I want to say, first of all, for the context, that last year in British Columbia, the average take-home pay increased by 4%. Due to wage increases and reclassifications. So the tide has turned back again in favor of the incomes of ordinary people, but that was to make this lockout so important because they're actually turning the tide backwards. At a time when nothing in the market or in their market share would warrant such a decision. Originally, the company asked for a two-tiered wage system. A two-tiered wage system is a simple form of discrimination against new employees, usually young people. It says that those people will never get the same wages as the existing employees. The labor movement has opposed two-tiered wages from its inception because we, of course, believe everybody should be treated the same. In Montreal, where there is another store, they do not have that's unionized, they don't have two-tiered wage systems. In fact, in Quebec, it's illegal to bring the system in. So we saw them brought in two-tiered wages and up to $7 an hour pay cuts and benefit cuts for people there. When that was rejected by the employees, they were locked out. They came back finally with a grid that would alter the salary grid, although not two-tiered, would dramatically change, again, the ability of people to earn a decent living at Ikea. And I know you'll hear more about that later, but this would lower benefits to employees, lower guaranteed hours, and lower wages to all the employees as they moved up the grid and extended the grid far away. I also want to talk about the other response the company had. In British Columbia, as in the jurisdiction of Quebec, we have what we call in the labor movement anti-scam legislation or anti-replacement worker legislation. In my opinion, that legislation has helped to, over the years, shorten labor disputes, keep them peaceful, and ensure a respectful relationship between employers and their employees. We've had that legislation in place since 1992. In essence, it says that in companies like Ikea, who originally started it, is they were not allowed to bring in outside workers to replace workers they blocked out. Instead, they launched a campaign to, as you will hear later, to intimidate, encourage, force workers to cross their own picket lines and go back to work. They did this in a number of ways, including threatening to lower their wages further if they didn't. And this was a concerted campaign by the company, completely out of the ordinary of normal labor relations in British Columbia. We seldom see companies go down this path in British Columbia. Most companies accept the circumstances and negotiate a collective agreement without going to that extent. In doing so, they opened themselves up to the charge that they were anti-union, and that the root cause of this dispute is not that they can't afford to pay the money, is that they want to rid themselves of the union. At one point, the company handed out information for Labour Watch, which is an organization in Canada dedicated to decertifying unions. It was set up by employers to encourage employers to get rid of unions and to help them get rid of the unions at their workplaces. In my opinion, this crosses a very significant line in labor relations here in British Columbia and should be a warning sign not just to British Columbians but to all working people worried about companies like Ikea and how they behave. This company obviously has two images. The first image is, of course, the public image, which is one of caring and sharing, respect for employees. They call them partners, not employees, and of course what they're doing today. This has nothing to do with the bottom line. This has nothing to do with profits. This has nothing to do with an economic model. This has everything to do with busting the union and lowering wages for people at a time when costs have never been higher. In British Columbia, it costs a lot to live. In Vancouver, the Lower Mainland, it costs more. I hope that you will take away the testimony you hear today, the information you gather on your trip, and you will take this dispute not only to the national level but to the international level. I believe that the people of Sweden would not support this kind of behavior, would not support the kind of behavior that's going on in British Columbia today, and I think with your help, we can make sure that by Christmas, not only is there a rush to IKEA, but is to be served by employees that have worked there, many of them for 20 or 30 years, who have a fair collective agreement that involve getting wage increases, not decreases. So again, thank you on behalf of the Labour Movement of British Columbia for being here today and for making this journey, and we wish you well with your report.
Thank you very much, Jim. Well, your last remark that I'm from Sweden. So of course we will take this back to the headquarters of IKEA in Sweden, of course, as well as the report. There were two things you can stay there. There were two things I forgot to say initially when we opened the meeting. That's probably you noticed that I forgot to introduce my colleague on my left-hand side. She's Lindsay Lister. She's a labor lawyer in BC, and she has served 8 years as a member of the Human Rights Tribunal between 2002 and 2010. And the second thing I forgot to say was that due to the lack of time we have, the only person that can ask questions to the speaker is from the panel. So I asked the panel if you have any questions to Jim. Hey, Jim.
I'm just wondering about the, for the report, I'm wondering about the local and even provincial political context. Would certain legislative agendas, let's say, would that have an impact on emboldening or encouraging this kind of behavior from companies like IKEA and others?
I think probably we had one other case when there was this kind of attack on workers with the use of replacement workers, encouraged by a very high-profile person on the Liberal Party. So there is a political context for this, but I don't believe that that's where this is coming from. I believe this is coming from IKEA. And it's not part of a larger plan by the government of British Columbia at this point. I would point out that the Liberal government has maintained the anti-replacement worker legislation for its entire 12 years of office as well, under the guise, to quote them, that this is, why would we cause grief in labor relations? They seem to be going fairly well. So I think, again, this particular activity that's going on in Richmond is a notch above what we've noticed and what we've seen in British Columbia in most labor relations situations.
Hi, Jim. Could you tell us a bit more about Labour Watch, please, and what its role in this dispute is, and other disputes like it?
Labour Watch is an organization that was set up by employers, and we're not clear which ones because they don't have to declare all those wonderful things. It's an organization dedicated to protecting what they describe as employee rights. And mostly it's the employee rights to leave their union and to attack the union and decertify their union. It comes out regularly with reports that show why unions are bad for working people, why we don't belong in the context of a Canadian society, why we don't make sense. And they have a profile for doing that, and they have historically done that role. It's unusual, I should say, in all my time in British Columbia here and in the labor movement, I've never seen Labour Watch being given out as a piece of resource material to workers who are on a picket line. It's completely provocative at one level, of course, because you're handing out information on how to basically break your union. So yes, that's the organization. And as I say, it's not that well known, but it's certainly known in some quarters. And that's why I found it very surprising that Ikea would be promoting this organization in the middle of a labor dispute with its own employees.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jim Sinclair. And we call the next testifier, Anita Dawson, local business agent from Teamsters, local 213.
Good afternoon, and thank you to the panel for attending on behalf of these workers to hear their concerns that have been raised. My name is Anita Dawson. I'm the business representative for Teamsters Local 213. I'm also the bargaining agent for the Local 213 IKEA members. I haven't always been the business agent for this group. I was actually a worker at IKEA for 12 years, and I worked in a number of different departments. And I also worked as I was elected as a shop steward, and I participated in bargaining for 2 sessions before I was hired as a business agent in 2007 for Local 213. During my time at the store, the working relationship with the IKEA management was one that looked for problem solving and solutions, and it was always resolved at an in-store level, and the groups worked together to have a good working relationship with management. To take you through a little bit of the history of the negotiations, which started in January of this year, we were coming out of a 5-year collective agreement, which expired on December 31st, 2012. And as that was a long, fairly lengthy agreement, both sides naturally had proposals that they wanted to be put forward. Especially since there was a brand new IKEA store that opened at the Richmond location just a few months earlier in April of 2012. The workers' proposals that were taken were naturally looking to see about cleaning a few language items up, but also to see whether or not there is any appetite to get wage increases and to just basically clean up the items that were on the table. The employer, on the other hand, came to the table with a booklet of extreme monetary and non-monetary offers and concessions. This came in the form of a reintroduced 2-tier wage system, as well as changes in eligibility for benefits and a reduction in those benefits as well. There were many, many other monetary and non-monetary concessions that the employer was looking for. These tactics were very troubling to the workers. As we moved through that first set of initial proposal exchange, it led to an offer that was voted by the membership on March 17th. It was rejected. We came back to the table, we tried to work a few things out, and there was a subsequent offer that was voted on May 5th, and then another one that was voted through a final offer vote conducted by the Labor Relations Board that was on May 9th. Both of those offers were rejected. The May 5th offer that was rejected was the same one that was voted again on May 9th. That was subsequently rejected. The two-tier system being the primary problem with that offer, which would have seen workers currently who were only with less than 4 years of service would not have gotten to the same wage rate that their co-workers, their fellow co-workers had who had more than 4 years of service. This would have led to them being paid at anywhere from $2 to $7 less an hour, depending on which classification they were in. On May 9th, Ikea gave lockout notice to the union that they were going to lock out on May 13th for a period of 1 hour. The union also gave strike notice at that point. Ikea, when they locked this out, they said they would invite their workers back under the terms of the already rejected offer. That was absolutely not a go for these workers. They've already told the company they rejected the offer. They voiced it through 3 separate votes, yet we are still trying to be forced to take this offer. Ikea also sent letters to their employees telling them that they could cross their own picket line and that Ikea would pay any fines and also represent them should the union take any action against them for crossing the picket line to work. As we know, crossing a picket line is a fundamental rule that you do not cross if you're a union member. You do not cross a picket line. And it's also part of our international constitution through the Brotherhood of Teamsters and also through our local union bylaws. And it sets out consequences for crossing a picket line. And that includes fines and possibly expulsion. As we moved through the summer, there was a mediation session, and that ended in an offer that was presented by the company. And this one did not include a two-tier wage system. This system was set up based on achieving sales goals and productivity measures. It was also based on a 6-year collective agreement. If the sales goals and the productivity measures were achieved, then the workers could conceivably get to the top wage rate that was currently in effect in 4 to 6 years. The current wage progression was 4 years. If the sales goals and productivity measures were not met, it could potentially mean it could take 20 years to get to the top wage rate. The employees in the bargaining unit unanimously rejected that offer because they could not see how that would be fair in the scheme of things. And in the long run, how could you possibly earn an income based on something that was so difficult to predict, such as sales goals and productivity measures? It was controlled by the company, was the underlying feeling for why they did not think this was a good system. There were still outstanding issues to do with benefits and the eligibility, where the company wanted to increase it from 20 hours a week to 24 in order to be eligible for benefits. With a large part-time workforce at IKEA, it was going to make it very difficult to potentially get those benefits that would have covered your family. Lastly, looking at IKEA's track record and in preparation and review of all the matters that have gone on, we looked at IKEA around the world, and that is why we asked for some intervention from a global perspective to come and look and investigate what's going on our local issue. We don't believe it's a local issue, especially after reviewing reports from Turkey where we've seen similar things that we thought, wow, we've experienced that here at Richmond IKEA. I'm going to give you a couple examples, and one of them would be looking at sort of the denial and how the shop stewards were viewed within the workplace. In the initial company offer, the employer tried to say that if you were a shop steward, that it would not be possible to hold a supervisory role. And we argued and said, no, that's not reasonable. We've always been very conscientious of our working relationship and respectful of our roles in the workplace, and understand that we have two different functions, and if we're a supervisor, we're a supervisor. And it never crossed over into our field as a shop steward. But to come to the table and ask that people who have put in their time and their effort and their dedication as a shop steward to now either step down and make the choice of either being a supervisor or a shop steward seemed ultimately unfair. The company reluctantly withdrew that proposal. The other major factor that has been an issue here at Richmond Ikea, which I was quite surprised that in Ikea Turkey seemed to have the same leanings, was the lack of union access to the workplace. In the past, it has not been an issue to go in, walk around, say hello to the members. I'm not having union meetings there. It's strictly hello, walk through, and see how everybody's doing. It just involves regular contact, and there was no other problem for it. And with this new management team, it's been a very difficult and trying process to get union access to the workers. The union notice board, and now the company feels that they need to approve all messages that go onto it. And quite frankly, that board has never been abused. It's only been used for official union business. So it does not stand to reason why now they need to have HR approve all the messages going on to the union notice board. There's also been an increase in the amount of worker discipline, which we have not seen the likes of before, for very petty instances. And obviously, we've been on the picket line now for 6 months, and the discipline that's come through on this picket line has been staggering. And it's for infractions that are either not documented or non-existent, in our opinion. And we'll be fighting every single one of them, because it is not fair, and this is a very peaceful, respectful picket line, and why IKEA feels that they need to discipline their workers instead of coming back to the table is very upsetting. With that, thank you, and for allowing me to testify, and I hope this will help you give an overall perspective of the labor dispute and the relationships with it.
Thank you very much, Anita. I open up the floor of the panel for questions to Anita.
Thanks, Anita. You gave a lot of examples from Turkey, from that context, which is, we would assume is a different context than Canada. But be that as it may, I'm actually wondering what your take would be on what the purpose of locking out employees for a period of 6 months would actually be in the context of Richmond and British Columbia.
The purpose of locking them out is to try and get them to accept the terms of this lesser agreement that they've already rejected. Why it's taking 6 months? They're not in any hurry. They've had some workers right at the beginning cross the picket line, and that's enabled them to continue to operate their business on a reduced scale, I might add, because the store has been closed and operating on reduced hours. Certain departments have been closed and the store has operated on reduced hours. But at the end of the day, they feel that we are going to break down and cross the picket line and accept those terms of that condition that we've already rejected.
Anita, a quick question on, like every dispute, this throws up different perspectives. So you get a perspective from IKEA and their management, and you get a perspective from the union and the workers involved. So can you just clarify one point? Because what I've heard a bit about from IKEA management is that your union is making unrealistic demands. So can you clarify what your demands are above and beyond what's included in the existing collective agreement?
On the last offer that we put to the company, we thought it was very reasonable because it would allow the workers to work through a progression. It would give the company some cost savings at the beginning. And if we were working off of a 6-year collective agreement, we felt that it was reasonable to continue on with the same type of wage progression that's worked well for the past. And that was a series of very, very minimal percentage increases to the top wage rate, which was 1.5%, with some lump sum payments so that the wage rate doesn't actually compound. All it does is stay stagnant, and then it allows the business to continue to move on, and the company can calculate what their costs are going to be. As far as the new workers that were coming in, it still allows for the harmony between the workers that are already at the top rate, but it gives them some breathing room as they move through the progression, albeit slightly shorter or longer progression.
Okay, thank you very much, Anita.
Thank you.
Just a moment. The next person we will hear from is actually an employee from Ikea, and Mark Caron. The podium is yours.
First off, I'd like to thank you guys just for coming to take a look at our labor situation. It's unfortunate that we are where we are today with Ikea. My name is Mark Caron. I've been with Ikea for 21 years at the Richmond location. And I think it's just important to understand, for me, nothing's been as consistent and stable in my life for 21 years as Ikea. It's the longest thing I've ever done. So for me, it's kind of like family. There's a lot of people I look around this room here today that, I walk the picket line with. I never thought in my career that I'd be on a picket line 6 years ago, being on strike. And I never thought that, again, this time around, we'd be locked up. And I know that it's interesting because we always hear, as Teamsters, we say we're locked out. Ikea says that we're on strike. And I'm here because it's about truth. It's not always about the collective agreement for me at this point, because it's gone so far beyond that. It's about the truth of what's happening. Ikea says we're on strike. We say we're locked out. We were on the sidewalk because Ikea forced us out. Be it for only an hour, it doesn't make sense to me why, after rejecting an offer 3 times, why you would say, hey, in good faith, we're going to negotiate because we respect your right to a union. We respect what you guys are doing here. We've heard that. We've heard that from some of the top leadership of the country, saying that they respect what we're doing and what we're fighting for. We have a current letter that says we want to negotiate. We want this to be settled in a good way. Yet they're still not even here. Unless there's a representative of Ikea in the room, I'd be curious. Because they know that we're here now. They can still come and join this public forum. Yet I don't believe that they're here. And if we're going to talk about world-class leadership, let's talk about why leaders aren't here and sticking up for what we are really here for. And Ikea was here and to create a better everyday life for the many. And we're going to do that by selling a wide range of furniture that the majority can afford to buy. Ikea stands for Ingvar Kamprad Uncharted Goodyard. We all know Ingvar Kamprad's story for those of us who have worked with Ikea. And it's inspiring to me. And I asked the panel and I asked everybody else in the world, what would Ingvar Kamprad do? Because he's got 9 points, his testament to a furniture dealer. He's got the culture and values, which I believe in my interpretation, and I'm also a values trainer for Ikea Richmond. What would Ingvar Kamprad do? If the Ikea spirit's a strong living reality, how come the many are on the sidewalk, on a picket line? Are we on strike? Are we locked out at this point? I still say we're locked out because we're pushed out by a company who says, in good faith, if you don't want it, there's the door. You can take what you didn't want if you want to come back to work. And I don't think that's negotiating in good faith, in my view. Ikea had a lot of information meetings before this was all happening. They put all of our coworkers through their code of conduct training so we would know how to behave on a picket line. It's not what was said, but it seems to be the consensus on the picket line today. Because there's a lot of fundamental violations in the way Ikea is behaving as well in their own code of conduct, with their harassment of the security on the picket line, with the way that they're behaving. But most importantly, I want people to understand that, when they brought us all together, there were some small group meetings where Ikea management of the store would bring us all together, and they would share what was in the contract. but they don't show you bits and pieces. What I appreciate about the Teamsters, when they do bring everybody together, they show the whole picture. They're not just showing bits and pieces of it. I remember specifically, and I look around the room today and I see some of the people who were in a meeting one day where we had a couple of our senior managers pitching us the new contract. And at the end of the day, when there's a lot of contradiction, because part of it was we're here to make money, and we're really off the values of what Ikea was talking about. It was all about money and profit and the bottom line. And it wasn't about how anybody felt or what anybody was doing. And at the end of the day, I asked the question, I said, at the end of the day, when we set this all down, is this contract more or less than what we have today? And they said it's less than what you have today. Where that comes in on the lines of the contract, I don't know. I don't look at the numbers. I just want to find some truth, because if Ikea was invited to this process for the past 2 days, yet they say that we're not, this is my experience of what I've seen for the past 6 months and even previous. Ingvar Kamprad would say, only while sleeping do we make no mistakes. Mistakes are a privilege of the busy, of the active. And it's our responsibility to learn from our mistakes. And if there's one thing I've seen in the past 6 years, and even since the last Swede left the service office, is all of a sudden Ikea makes no mistakes. They're like their own demigods in the furniture world. And they don't listen to people. They won't tell you you're right, or I hear you, or I understand you. They're very quick to tell you that you are wrong, and that what you have to say doesn't matter. I've been told already before that if I don't like it, there's the door, get out. It's not about work-life balance anymore. Ikea was a company where they wanted us to be comfortable. You'll never get rich with Ikea, but you'll be comfortable. We'll take care of you. And that's when I started, and I thought, wow, this company's pretty awesome, and they got some great values, they've got some things I can really connect to. And then the way that they're behaving today, just in basic leadership, let's take a look at the culture and the values. I'm willing to bet that if you interview all the co-workers, they're not living up to who they say they are. Because the Ikea that I know, based on what they are on paper and what they talk about in philosophy, about finding the different way, about most things being, most things need to be done, it's a glorious future, about taking responsibility. There's a lot of great stuff. The 9 points of Ikea Kamprad and the testimony of a furniture dealer need to be applied to this situation, because it'll solve it, and it'll solve it quickly. But we're not seeing world-class leadership step up to the plate here and say, we hear you, we understand, we're going to find the way. What we're hearing is one thing, and what we're seeing is the opposite of what we're hearing. And I find that hard to swallow these days, because again, truth is truth. And we all know that if the right thing was being done, we'd be working today. But I don't understand how we can admit that we make no mistakes, how they are the linchpins, in my opinion, because we haven't even had anything to vote for and anything to discuss. Yet the Ikea values and the Ikea way even respect the fact that we should have a union, we should have organized labor. It's my personal belief that part of the wage structure of this country and part of the wage structure of North America within reason is based on what Ikea Richmond has achieved. Or else we'd be a high turnover, high volume staff machine just for corporate profit. But I do believe that there was a day where Ingvar Kamprad wasn't about the profit, it was about the people, because it was about the people who created Ikea what it is today. But they're not, if you're not a yes man and you're not kissing the corporate backside, they don't want to hear you. They don't want to listen to truth. They just want to listen to what they have to say, and they want to swallow it. And for me, it's hard to stand back and watch it, to see it on the picket lines, to the behavior, to see how Ikea is not showing up, and then to stand there in their arrogance and to tell us how we are wrong. We're not wrong. We feel the way we feel. We're experiencing the things we experience as a collective. And when our last vote was unanimous at 239 against, that says something. And if Ikea is going to be arrogant enough to not listen and to not hear it and say, oh well, and still let us sit out there, we'll sit out there. Because we've gone too far, we've stood too long for what we believe is right, to let a big, Swedish non-corporate company that's supposed to be about non-profit take over. I just don't believe it's right. And for that reason, I'm here today to speak to each and every one of you. And I really hope you guys find some facts, because sometimes I don't even know what the facts are anymore either. But I know what the truth is, because the truth isn't here, and it's what feels right. And if it feels right, do it, move towards it, man. But I'll tell you right now, that big, blue, yellow, $125 million building they just built doesn't feel very good right now. And that's because of what's going on inside. Leadership will solve this. But don't read my lips, watch my feet. walk your talk, IKEA, is what I'm saying. Step up to the plate, tear down your fences, get rid of security, and get us back to work. Find the way. That's what IKEA is about, always finding the way. Even our camper went into a fair one day, rolled into a carpet in the trunk of a car, because he wanted to see what was going on. He was willing to find the way. And now all I see with IKEA is they don't really care. That's what I see. I don't know what to think about it anymore. But I'll stand on that picket line until this thing is done, because I want to see how it gets resolved. And I want to see it resolved in a good way. For the spirit of the people, for when we go back to work, so that we can work and do what we love to do. Because it's not just us. Look at what they're doing to the customer and what they've done to their own brand name. It's not a pleasant thing. Some customers don't care. Some customers care a lot. But they were inviting customers to a store that was closed on Tuesdays, and they weren't very happy. And I don't understand how that's creating a better everyday life for the many. So with that being said, I just challenge IKEA to step up to the plate, because they're not even here. The people I want to talk to is IKEA. I want to talk to the people who make the decisions at IKEA, not their paid PR people, not the people who aren't saying anything of value. Step up to the plate and get it done. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Mark. It was a very emotional testimony from your side. My colleagues here, Mike, you have
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Mark. I think we actually, what you're saying, your truth was echoed on the picket line yesterday when the delegation arrived and we spoke to a lot of your coworkers there. It was actually quite striking. But my question is, was there a moment in time or anything that you can identify that where that shift happened? Because it seems like there was a long history of people quite very, very happy to work in that store in particular, and for a myriad of reasons. And just, I don't know.
I've seen it change since the last time we were on strike. It was the last store manager and the way that the store management has shifted. And really, I see it as stemming from the very top of the country. There's a couple of people I think that, their beliefs and the way they do business is part of the process. Because it's about the bottom line. And I've seen it over 6 years. I've never seen so much instability in IKEA management for store managers. And I don't want to say incompetence, but it's tough to see such instability at the top, And there's a lot of people who've been here a lot of years who know what to do. I'm willing to bet if you let the people that I see around this room today do their job, to do what they know, and enjoy the process, IKEA will get the results they want all day long. But when you tell everybody that they're wrong, they don't matter, and you don't need them, and that you're just a number. I used to be Mark Cron. I'm now 410527, and I'm worth $483 per work hour. I had my manager come down to me on the sales floor one day, and there was a lady here, right here, Teresa. We were talking, and she was telling us, you know what? Our manager, and we worked with her for years, and I don't believe she believes what she was saying, but she was told to say it, that, it's not about work-life balance anymore. The schedule's going to be what it is. If you guys don't like it, there's the door. And we kind of chuckled about it and just write our numbers off our name tag. But this is the way the mentality is. I was asked do I think I know better than IKEA? No, they're a successful company, but I know if I could do what I know I need to do, this business could make more money. And she said, I agree. So why aren't people allowed to be free and to do within what needs to happen in the growth of any business to make it happen? But we're too, what I would say, title-driven in IKEA. IKEA was never about status before, and when I started there, I wanted status. And when I'm here now, I want no status at all. But I see it happening. It's the American way. It's the infiltration of the American culture and the way Americans do business, how I see it. I call it the Americanization of IKEA. It's just what's happening. They've lost the Swedish values, and it's one of the last Swede left service office running this country. It's changed. And that's when I saw it. And I'll tell you, I sat in a room on a one-on-one with my most direct manager just a few days before we went on strike, and what was said to me, and it was asked to be kept to me, but you know what? Truth is truth, guys. I was asked to be selfish and think only of myself in this vote. And I couldn't do that. Because I am about the many. I'm about creating the better everyday life for the many. And I would say, what would Ingvar Kamprad do? Can we get Ingvar Kamprad on the phone and say, Ingvar, what would you do? I don't think he would do this. That answers your question. But that's what I say. This past 6 years and the way this has been going is kind of silly to me.
I've got no question for you, Mark, but I do want to say that what we've heard from you today is basically a lot more passionate and a lot more eloquent than anything we've read or heard from IKEA management about their own values and about what they should be and how they should be as a company.
Thank you for that. I just know that if IKEA would stand up to what they say and who they are, we wouldn't be here. We never would have been on the street or locked out or whatever you want to call it. If we were living by it and IKEA was actually true to their words and negotiating in good faith, this would never have happened, because in good faith doesn't lock out 300 plus coworkers. In good faith doesn't put out letters that lie about the facts to their customers. And if, I'm sure you guys saw the most recent one about how they're willing to do all these things for the customer and the coworker and what their letter is about and how they're willing to get back to the table. I don't see any actions that support their words. And this is the problem that I've seen in the past 6 years since our last strike. What the walk is and what the talk is not synonymous. And the truth is the truth. And let's get down to it, because when you get down to that, you're going to find a resolution pretty quick. But I believe there's something bigger going on here than just what we're seeing. There's a reason why IKEA is doing this. There's a reason why they're spending the money that they're spending on security guards and gates and lost sales and pissing off customers and just everything that they're doing. There's a reason. To me as a leader, for me as just a human being, for me as someone that comes from the heart, why would you do that? You got billions of dollars, and this isn't about money. Unless it's about, maybe you don't want us to have money. Maybe you don't want to share it. Maybe it's about you. I don't know anymore, because IKEA will never be honest. IKEA's not being truthful now. Why do we think they're going to be truthful tomorrow? I don't know, unless something changes. But I believe that thinking has to change, or the people have to change. And I don't believe it's the people in the store that need to change, because we've been here for a long time. And we built for the backbone of what North America is, because we were the first store. Created the pipeline east to west. It created the profits that built the rest of North America. It's an integral part. We should be celebrated and revered. I think we should be the highest paid co-workers in the country. That's just me, and I don't mean to be arrogant about it, but you know what? There's some people who've been here a long time. They know what to do, and they know what needs to be done. And we need to be able to do it. And we don't need to be blaming a union. This is not about blaming. This is about stepping up and taking action, people, and getting the job done. Take care of your people. They'll give you what you want. People don't care how much you know until you know how much you care. They don't know what you want to do. They don't care about that until they know that you care about them. And if they feel you don't care about them, guess what? We don't care about you. That's just the way of the human condition. But if they stepped up and show they care like they do in their values, like they walk the talk, because man, I put a number of these people through some values training, and IKEA is not doing what they say I was going to say they do. So I'm happy to be here today and speak up for them. And I'll challenge any IKEA manager, any IKEA, anyone, anywhere on their values or beliefs in what's happening. But they don't step up. They don't come to the plate. They won't have a dialogue. They'll send PR people to hide behind a yellow and blue wall. They don't talk to people. They're not coming to us. They just want to play corporate line. And I think it's time that, if you guys can do something, I'll be honest with you, part of me was skeptical, but I'm happy to see who you guys are, what you bring to the table, and if you can dig up the facts and present the truth in a way that people can hear it, understand it, get the message out, maybe we will be back to work by Christmas. Wouldn't that be a nice gift?
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that passion testimony. I'm sure all of the international delegation will bring back your message. Certainly be also in the report back. The next person to speak is also an employee of IKEA. Keith Austin. Podium is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Keith Austin, and I'm a 27-year employee of IKEA. I'm speaking as an ex-shop steward and someone who's going to try and bring a bit of business background to the situation by way of a little bit of explanation as to perhaps why we're here in the situation we are today. Before I do that, I just wanted to acknowledge the Coast Salish, the Musqueam, and other First Nations on whose unceded territory this meeting is taking place. Where the business situation for IKEA started to go problematical in the lower market is that the Richmond store was always highly successful. It had the head office for a long time. It was the beachhead in North America. Sales were always very high. It was a training center for people from other stores, for leadership positions. In 2003, IKEA opened a second location in Coquitlam. And when you open another branch of an existing business, you expect to lose some of your sales to the new location. It's called cannibalization. When Coquitlam opened, the cannibalization was 40% of the sales of the Richmond store. The previous record within IKEA was 25%. When you lose 40% of your top line, it's a huge problem for the profitability of your business. And ever since then, with this strategy of concentration of locations, which has been carried out in North America, there's been an issue of store-to-store cannibalization. And when you're losing the top line, you're losing on the bottom line. So you reach a point where it doesn't matter how well you manage your costs, it doesn't matter how well you manage your employees and your compensation costs. Without the top line in volume retail, you're not going to make your projections. The reason the cannibalization is so high is that the Coquitlam store is 23 kilometers from the Richmond store. Internal IKEA studies indicate that the distance between two IKEA stores in North America needs to be 60 kilometers. Otherwise, you get this excessive cannibalization. And for those who have been at the bargaining table since 2003 and those who have worked in the store since 2003, this is where all of these internal measures, where the words productivity and dollars per worked hour became absolute buzzwords. And they became the justification for all of the management actions. So we have a new store in Richmond, 10 years after the Coquitlam store was opened. Coquitlam store cost $125 million. The new Richmond IKEA store budgeted something like $118 million. Unfortunately, Coquitlam was too close, and Richmond moved maybe half a kilometer to the new location. So they made the investment in the local market, somewhere in the region of $250 million, not making any money on it. This is why we're getting the action we're getting. Those of you who have access to the numbers also know that within the first year of the Richmond store opening, certainly there's a large increase in the sales. Unfortunately for IKEA, most of it, more than 80% of it I suspect, is simply a recannibalization back from Coquitlam, because Coquitlam's cuts are simply shifting over to the Richmond store. So I think there's a lot of pressure on the management within Canada to hit these productivity numbers. They've got the same problem in Toronto. They've got the store in Vaughan that's too close, and we know the numbers out of that store were terrible in the beginning. The problem is you have to concede that you made the strategic error, and you can't solve it by cutting your compensation costs. If you cost out what we would lose if we accepted that offer today, I don't have the ability to do that. But let's say it's a few $100,000 a year that IKEA might save in this location. Against a strategic error of allocation of capital of these stores being too close together and not selling enough, it's nothing. A few $100,000, it's petty change to IKEA internationally, and it doesn't solve the profitability issue for Canada or for the Richmond store. You have to concede that you've made the error, and you have to come up with a strategy to solve it. We haven't heard that this is the problem. We haven't heard that there's a long-term plan for the local market to solve these sales issues. You take our sales today, add on 40%. We'd still be talking about productivity, we'd still be talking about costs. It would be a different conversation than what we're having today. So I don't think it's the responsibility of this collective bargaining unit to pay for bad decisions, bad strategic decisions made at many levels of management higher than us. IKEA's made mistakes, many. The founder talks about it on and on. Yes, it's a lot of money. IKEA needs to concede its error, properly locate the other store in the market, and that will solve the top line. Once you solve the top line, you will solve the bottom line all by itself. So I don't think that we should go in and take this offer because 3 years from now, or 6 years from now, the problem won't be solved. We will have provided a small amount of immediate cost relief, and we will be faced with the exact same response from the employer. There will be more cuts, more complaints, that productivity is not high enough, sales goals aren't being met. So I am concerned about the company taking responsibility for the problems. The collective bargaining agreement, the flexibility they're demanding, the cost cuts they're demanding, would be marginal at best in solving the situation that they're facing. It's not the solution. And IKEA can well afford to take care of us, as it always has, while it works out these other issues. IKEA was 17 years in North America before they turned to profit. The company goal on profit, it's right there in the founder's words, it's a good result in the long run. I think we need to see some long-term thinking from this company and some investment in its own people. Thank you, folks.
In case panel, you have any questions?
Thanks a lot, Keith. We heard on the line yesterday, on the ticket line, about the old store and how the old store was actually, some folks were saying that it might have actually been running better productivity than it should have, given the square footage and all these other factors, right? And some folks attributed that to the workers and the extra lengths to which they would have to go with different warehouses and different locations and all the in-between stuff that now with the new building, that's not really a factor anymore. So I'm wondering, you were talking as well about, IKEA's kind of looking at the wrong area in terms of finding a solution. What would your view be on finding a solution? Where should they be looking? And especially given that backstory of the old.
Well, I think as long as when they looked at locations, they looked at Coquitlam